You check the price tag on your coffee this morning. Maybe $5. Maybe 7 if you added something extra. You went a little. You move on with your day. But the real answer to what expensive actually means is way stranger than that. Because somewhere on this planet, a single gram of something exists that would make your coffee, your car, and probably your entire house look like pocket change. Not because someone decided to make it rare. Because making it exist at all breaks the laws of what materials are supposed to cost. Let's start small. Or rather, let's start with something so small you couldn't see it without a microscope. And yet it might be the most expensive substance humanity has ever created. Antimatter. Your brain probably filed that we're under science fiction. It isn't. Physicists at CERN have actually produced it, atom by atom, inside particle accelerators the size of small cities. Here's the problem. Antimatter is the mirror opposite of ordinary matter, and the moment it touches anything normal, it annihilates in a burst of pure energy. So to make it, you need to smash particles together at nearly the speed of light, catch the fragments, and trap them in a magnetic bottle so they never touch the walls of their container. A 2006 NASA-funded analysis estimated that producing a single gram of antimatter this way would cost roughly $62 trillion. Not a typo. Trillion. Your entire country's economy might not cover it. And even if you paid that bill, you still couldn't hold it because contact with your own hand would end the experiment and possibly the room. Now compare that to something you've actually heard of. Diamonds. You already know they're expensive, but you probably think of the clear ones, the classic engagement ring kind. Those aren't even close to the top. Colored diamonds, especially red ones, are so rare that gemologists have documented fewer than 30 of gem quality size in existence on the entire planet. The Musaif red diamond, just over 5 carats, sold for close to $8 million. Per carat, that's more than most people will earn across their entire lives, compressed into a crystal you could lose in a couch cushion. Here's where it gets interesting, though. Rarity alone doesn't create value. If it did, the rarest rock in your backyard would be worth something too. What actually happens is your brain assigns worth based on effort, scarcity, and story, all three at once. A team of behavioral economists studying luxury markets found that perceived value spikes dramatically when an object combines extreme rarity with an irreplaceable origin story, something that literally cannot be manufactured again. That's why the next entry on this list isn't a gemstone at all. Californium, a radioactive element so difficult to produce that only a few grams of it exist anywhere on Earth at any given time, all of it manufactured inside nuclear reactors under extreme supervision. It's used to start up nuclear reactors and to detect gold and silver deposits underground. 1 gram costs somewhere around $27 million, and unlike your diamond, you would not want to keep this one in a drawer. It emits enough radiation that handling it requires remote robotic arms and lead shielding. You're looking at something that is quite literally priced by how dangerous and impossible it is to make. Let's talk about something you can actually see with your own eyes, hanging in a museum. In 2017, a painting called Salvator Mundi, believed to be painted by Leonardo da Vinci, sold at auction for $450 million. Art historians still argue about how much of the brushwork is actually Leonardo's and how much was restored by later hands. But here's the strange part. The price wasn't really for the paint or the wood panel underneath it. Researchers who study auction psychology have shown that with one-of-a-kind historical artifacts, buyers aren't purchasing the object, they're purchasing the only remaining physical connection to a moment in history that will never exist again. You weren't paying for pigment. You were paying for the fact that nothing else like it can ever be made because the hand that made it has been gone for 500 years. Now flip that logic completely because not everything on this list is old. Some of it is stitched together specifically because it doesn't exist anywhere else right now above your head. The International Space Station, a structure assembled piece by piece in orbit, built by multiple countries, launched across more than 40 separate rocket missions. Total cost estimates land somewhere around $150 billion, making it, by most calculations, the single most expensive object humanity has ever constructed. Not the rarest material, not the smallest gem, an entire habitable structure, floating 400 kilometers above your head right now, moving at 8 kilometers per second, built because getting anything into orbit multiplies its cost by a factor most of us can't intuitively picture. Every bolt, every wire, every liter of water on board had to be lifted out of Earth's gravity well, and that lift is where almost all the money went. Here's a smaller example of that same principle, closer to your kitchen. Saffron, a spice made from the dried stigma of a specific crocus flower. Each flower produces exactly 3 thin red threads, and every single one has to be handpicked because machines destroy them. It takes roughly 150,000 flowers, picked entirely by hand, to produce 1 kilogram. That puts saffron at several $1,000s per kilogram, making it, gram for gram, more expensive than silver. Agricultural economists who've studied labor-intensive crops point out that saffron's price has almost nothing to do with the plant itself, and almost everything to do with the sheer number of human hands required to gather something that tiny. Notice the pattern forming here. Every single item on this list is expensive for a completely different reason. Antimatter costs what it costs because of energy and physics. Californium because of danger and scarcity. The painting because of irreplaceable history. The space station because of gravity itself. Saffron because of human labor multiplied across an almost absurd scale. There's no single formula for why something becomes priceless. There's only ever one of these factors pushed to its absolute extreme. Which brings us to the strangest entry of all, because this one isn't a substance or an object at all. It's information. In 2021, a digital collage by an artist known as Beeple sold at Christie's for $69 million. Not a painting, not a sculpture, a file. Something you could, in theory, screenshot for free in half a second. Art market researchers studying this sale noted something fascinating. The buyer wasn't purchasing the image because the image itself was already public and viewable by anyone. They were purchasing a verified, unforgeable record proving they were the sole owner of the original. Which means humanity has now reached a point where we will pay more for proof of ownership than for the object being owned. Sit with that for a second. We used to fight wars over land, over gold, over physical things you could hold and defend. Now some of the highest prices ever paid are for lines of code, proving a file belongs to you and nobody else. So what does all this actually tell you about value itself? It tells you that price was never really about the material. A diamond is just compressed carbon, the same element sitting in the graphite of your pencil. Antimatter is just particles behaving exactly the way physics predicts they should. What makes any of it expensive is a story layered on top of the object, a story about scarcity, danger, history, labor, or proof. Strip the story away, and you're left with atoms that are, chemically speaking, almost worthless. Which loops back to that coffee you bought this morning. You didn't just pay for hot water and ground beans. You paid, in some small way, for the labor of farmers who picked the cherries by hand, for the roasting process, for the convenience of not making it yourself. Every price tag you've ever looked at, from your morning drink to a painting worth $500 million, is really just a measurement of a story someone decided was worth telling. You checked the price tag on your coffee this morning, and now you know exactly what you're really paying for.